Chapter 64 of Barnaby Rudge, A Tale of the Riots of '80. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Mill Nicholson. Barnaby Rudge, A Tale of the Riots of '80 by Charles Dickens. Chapter 64. Breaking the silence they had hitherto preserved, they raised a great cry as soon as they were ranged before the jail, and demanded to speak to the governor. This visit was not wholly unexpected, for his house, which fronted the street, was strongly barricaded, the wicket gate of the prison was closed up, and at no loophole or grating was any person to be seen. Before they had repeated their summons many times, a man appeared upon the roof of the governor's house, and asked what it was they wanted. Some said one thing, some another, and some only groaned and hissed. It being now nearly dark, and the house high, many persons in the throng were not aware that any one had come to answer them, and continued their clamour until the intelligence was gradually diffused through the whole concourse. 10 minutes or more elapsed before any one voice could be heard with tolerable distinctness, during which interval the figure remained perched alone against the summer evening sky, looking down into the troubled street. "Are you," said Hugh at length, "Mr. Akerman, the head jailer here?" "Of course he is, brother," whispered Dennis. But Hugh, without minding him, took his answer from the man himself. "Yes," he said, "I am." "You have got some friends of ours in your custody, master." "I have a good many people in my custody." He glanced downward, as he spoke, into the jail, and the feeling that he could see into the different yards, and that he overlooked everything which was hidden from their view by the rugged walls, so lashed and goaded the mob that they howled like wolves. "Deliver up our friends," said Hugh, "and you may keep the rest." "It's my duty to keep them all. I shall do my duty." "If you don't throw the doors open, we shall break them down," said Hugh, "for we will have the rioters out." "All I can do, good people," Akerman replied, "is to exhort you to disperse, and to remind you that the consequences of any disturbance in this place will be very severe, and bitterly repented by most of you, when it is too late." He made as though he would retire when he said these words, but he was checked by the voice of the locksmith. "Mr. Akerman!" cried Gabriel. "Mr. Akerman!" "I will hear no more from any of you," replied the governor, turning towards the speaker, and waving his hand. "But I am not one of them," said Gabriel. "I am an honest man, Mr. Akerman, a respectable tradesman, Gabriel Varden the locksmith. You know me?" "You among the crowd?" cried the governor in an altered voice. "Brought here by force. Brought here to pick the lock of the great door for them," rejoined the locksmith. "Bear witness for me, Mr. Akerman, that I refuse to do it, and that I will not do it, come what may of my refusal. If any violence is done to me, please to remember this." "Is there no way of helping you?" said the governor. "None, Mr. Akerman. You'll do your duty, and I'll do mine. Once again, you robbers and cutthroats," said the locksmith, turning round upon them, "I refuse. Ha! Howl till you're hoarse. I refuse." "Stay, stay," said the jailer hastily. "Mr Varden, I know you for a worthy man, and one who would do no unlawful act except upon compulsion." "Upon compulsion, sir?" interposed the locksmith, who felt that the tone in which this was said conveyed the speaker's impression that he had ample excuse for yielding to the furious multitude who beset and hemmed him in on every side, and among whom he stood, an old man, quite alone. Upon compulsion, sir, I'll do nothing.' 'Where is that man,' said the keeper anxiously, 'who spoke to me just now?' 'Here,' Hugh replied. 'Do you know what the guilt of murder is, and that by keeping that honest tradesman at your side, you endanger his life?' 'We know it very well,' he answered. 'For what else did we bring him here? Let's have our friends, master, and you shall have your friend. Is that fair, lads?' The mob replied to him with a loud hurrah. 'You see how it is, sir,' cried Varden. 'Keep him out, in King George's name. Remember what I have said. Good night.' There was no more parley. A shower of stones and other missiles compelled the keeper of the jail to retire, and the mob, pressing on and swarming round the walls, forced Gabriel Varden close up to the door. In vain the basket of tools was laid upon the ground before him, and he was urged in turn by promises, by blows, by offers of reward, and threats of instant death, to do the office for which they had brought him there. 'No,' cried the sturdy locksmith, 'I will not.' He had never loved his life so well as then, but nothing could move him. The savage faces that glared upon him, look where he would, the cries of those who thirsted like wild animals for his blood, the sight of men pressing forward and trampling down their fellows as they strove to reach him, and struck at him above the heads of other men with axes and with iron bars, all failed to daunt him. He looked from man to man, and face to face, and still with quickened breath and lessening colour cried firmly, 'I will not.' Dennis dealt him a blow upon the face, which felled him to the ground. He sprung up again like a man in the prime of life, and with blood upon his forehead, caught him by the throat. 'You cowardly dog!' he said. 'Give me my daughter! Give me my daughter!' They struggled together. Some cried, 'Kill him!' and some, but they were not near enough, strove to trample him to death. Tug as he would at the old man's wrists, the hangman could not force him to unclench his hands. 'Is this all the return you make me, you ungrateful monster?' he articulated with great difficulty, and with many oaths. 'Give me my daughter!' cried the locksmith, who was now as fierce as those who gathered round him. 'Give me my daughter!' He was down again, and up, and down once more, and buffeting with a score of them who bandied him from hand to hand, when one tall fellow, fresh from a slaughter-house, whose dress and great thigh boots smoked hot with grease and blood, raised a pole-axe, and, swearing a horrible oath, aimed it at the old man's uncovered head. At that instant, and in the very act, he fell himself, as if struck by lightning, and over his body a one-armed man came darting to the locksmith's side. Another man was with him, and both caught the locksmith roughly in their grasp. 'Leave him to us,' they cried to Hugh, struggling as they spoke to force a passage backward through the crowd. 'Leave him to us. Why do you waste your whole strength on such as he, when a couple of men can finish him in as many minutes? You lose time. Remember the prisoners. Remember Barnaby.' The cry ran through the mob. Hammers began to rattle on the walls, and every man strove to reach the prison and be among the foremost rank. Fighting their way through the press and struggle, as desperately as if they were in the midst of enemies rather than their own friends, the two men retreated with the locksmith between them, and dragged him through the very heart of the concourse. And now the strokes began to fall like hail upon the gate, and on the strong building. For those who could not reach the door, spent their fierce rage on anything, even on the great blocks of stone, which shivered their weapons into fragments, and made their hands and arms to tingle as if the walls were active in their stout resistance, and dealt them back their blows. The clash of iron ringing upon iron, mingled with